still ask questions.
Okay.
We're going to bring to order the April 18th, 2013 regular meeting for the West Sacramento City Planning Commission.
I don't think your mic's.
It is on, yes.
Oh, okay.
It's not working? Can you hear me? All right. I'm going to ask Commissioner Olson to lead us in the pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. As a reminder, anyone wishing to address the commission should fill out a request to address form and present to the clerk. In city right now I have 3. We have 4. Okay. Thank you. Also, as a reminder, presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the commission. The commission is prohibited by law from discussing issues not on the agenda brought to them at this time. So, David, any correspondence or staff communications for the Planning Commission?
Yes, Mr. Galvan. Tonight, I just want to point out 3 items of correspondence you should have before you this evening. The first is a letter addressed to the Planning Commission, not regarding an item on tonight, but is from the Ironworks Homeowners Association, raising some concerns about recent activity in the adjacent UP rail yard. So this was addressed to the Planning Commission. However, I would like to know we have relayed this to our transportation manager, who will be following up with the Ironworks folks after they gather some more information. Secondly, they should also have a memo from Kathy Allen regarding item number 3, and then also should have a copy of my PowerPoint presentation for item number 4 regarding the housing element. So that concludes staff's communications.
Okay, and everybody has that? Okay. Any disclosure of ex parte communications at this time from the commission?
No.
No? All right. So let's move on to item number 1, the public hearing regarding West Sacramento self-storage used on the tentative parcel map, and we'll turn it over to you.
Commissioner Galvan, could we would like to take action on the consent calendar, please?
I apologize, you are correct. Item number 1, consideration of proof of the minutes from the March 21st, 2013 commission meeting. Can I get a motion?
I'd make a motion that we approve the minutes of March 21st.
Moved by Commissioner Moore,
A second.
seconded by Commissioner Olson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Okay, motion passes.
Mr. Chair, I need to abstain from that vote.
Mr. Levy abstains. Item number 2, the public hearing regarding the West Sacramento self-storage. And Kathy.
Good evening, Chairman Galvin and members of the Commission. This item is a request for approval of a tentative parcel map creating 3 parcels from one 12.71 acre parcel. First parcel is 2.46 acres, the second parcel 4.6 acres, and the third parcel 5.56 acres. As proposed by the applicant at this time, parcels 1 and 2 would remain vacant, and parcel 3 is proposed to contain a self-storage facility. The project is located in Westbridge Plaza Phase 2, which is located east of Lake Washington Boulevard, north of Westbridge Plaza Phase 1, and west of the Arlington Oaks neighborhood. The project is also located adjacent to the existing McDonald's and Taco Bell restaurants, which are currently the only structures located in Westbridge Plaza Phase 2. The tentative map is being proposed to facilitate development of the applicant's self-storage facility. That project would be located on parcel 3, which is primarily located along the eastern portion of the site, with a smaller portion of the parcel located in the northwest corner of the site. The majority of the storage buildings would be located on the eastern portion, while the office and manager's residence and a small amount of storage buildings would be located on the northwestern site. The applicant's self-storage project would have to adhere to the framework plan and the Westbridge Plaza design guidelines. The applicant has submitted design review application for the project, which is currently under review, and the project meets criteria outlined in PD 37 regarding the public access easement for the vehicles and pedestrians. The extension of road, which currently ends at the boundary of the Taco Bell parcel, will meet this criteria as it will be extended to the northern edge of the property. This concludes my presentation. The applicant is in attendance and would be happy to answer any questions for you. Also note that Mark Collier from engineering is here if you have any engineering questions for him. One final little bit of housekeeping. Staff would ask if you choose to approve the project that you strike condition 35. That was put in the staff report in error. Thank you.
Okay, any questions by the commission? I'll start with Commissioner Olson.
No questions, thank you.
Russ?
Thank you, Kathy. I do understand why the parcel split is coming before the commission, but I'm not quite sure I understand the requirement for the storage facility to actually be before the commission.
That was more of an FYI, just so you knew what was proposed to be going there.
We're voting on
You're
conditions
voting,
that affect the storage unit directly, though, in its construction, including, well, and the CEQA analysis, including the environmental stuff. And it's authorized by the general plan, so I guess what I'm getting at is specifically what is the vote tonight? Is it for the split? Is it for the approval of the project?
Tonight, we're seeking action on the tentative parcel map.
On just the tentative parcel map?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Perez?
No, I don't.
Charlie?
Yeah, I guess if that's the case, if all we're doing is the tentative parcel map, are we going to talk about, or is the storage facility then coming back to us?
the storage facility is actually a permitted use in the zone.
Okay. I mean, I hope we only have one more parcel out there in Southport, because we got a ton of these things going in already. But are we going to finish the noise wall then, all the way to the end of their project that's up on the levee?
At this time, I think it's going to just be the berm.
Why wouldn't we continue the noise berm wall? I thought that was the condition, that once we built there, we were going to, from the original project, we were going to continue the noise wall all the way to the end of the berm, and which would be the end of their project.
Good evening, Commission Chairman. So I processed the original entitlements on the Westbridge Plaza. And to answer your question about the berm and the wall, the condition from the original plan development modifications that were made would require a noise analysis to determine whether or not the noise wall needed to be extended. It was primarily focused on, the prior noise analysis was for truck docks.
Right.
And so that's what was triggering the wall. In this particular case, because it is within the PD, that is something that could be required of the project to do a comparison of what the noise generation would be from the mini storage compared to the prior analysis to determine whether or not the wall is still needed.
But of course, that could go, we don't know what's going in the other two parcels yet.
Well, the self-storage abuts the berm. It
Sure.
takes up the entire length. So that in and of itself would create some buffer, some noise buffer.
I would think so.
So,
Yeah.
and the other two parcels, if the parcel 2, if there were truck docks that went in, that were proposed there, and they were within the 350 feet, they would need an amendment to allow truck docks within the 350 feet of the residential boundary. And then that would be something that if it were approved, they might have to be the project to build
And
the
of
wall.
course, this facility's gonna have trucks in and out of it at some point, loading and unloading all the time.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's
fair.
the prior entitlements did leave it open for further analysis as to whether or not a wall would be required based on noise generation.
Do you want, well, since you're standing there, you probably want to answer this question too. If the road's going to the end and it's gonna dead end into the port property or the, whatever's down there, are we gonna make that just stop there as a road, or are we gonna make that a cul-de-sac so people can't easily access out into the port property?
I am sure that Mr. Collier, acting in his city engineer capacity, will ensure that it meets the fire dead-end standards, as well as has mechanisms that do not allow cars to then enter a property that's not improved. And that property is currently under the trust of the successor agency, because the property along the Barge Canal, just north of this project, is owned by the redevelopment agency. So it's held in trust now by the successor agency.
Okay,
Does that answer?
well, kind of,
Kind of.
yeah.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Russ?
I know we're bombarding you with questions before we open the public hearing. Getting back to the vote, however, tonight, there's a CEQA analysis, mitigated negative, I'm sorry, this was categorical exemption. The categorical exemption appears to be applying to the storage facility as well. And this is where I'm getting a little confused, as it talks about the removal of the heritage oak trees.
Yeah, the map in and of itself does not authorize removal of any trees. One tree that has been, all the trees have been analyzed as part of the design review application by an arborist. One of them has been deemed to be unhealthy and will need to be removed. In working on the design review side of it, the applicant has reconfigured a portion of the property to preserve one of those heritage trees, which is at the north end of the property. However, there is one additional heritage tree that will not be able to be saved through this project, and so that is something that is being administered currently by the city's urban forest manager according to the city's tree preservation ordinance. And so that if that tree is indeed removed, then they will owe mitigation fees or a replanting program according to that ordinance. So tonight that we're still asking for looking at subdivision of the property. However, we do tend to have a standard condition on all parcel maps that the parcel map in and of itself is not authorizing any tree removal. That needs further analysis by the city staff, including the city's urban forest manager.
Okay, thank you.
So Charlie and Russ hit my questions. I just want to be clear. I think you stated it, but I do want to be clear. All we are is voting on the parcel split tonight, nothing to do with the storage facility.
That is correct. We certainly were, since the storage facility is shown on tentative maps, certainly want to indicate and discuss what is proposed there, but tonight's action before you is solely on the 3-lot parcel map.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. So if there's no more questions at this time, we'll open the public hearing. If anybody wishes to speak, I thought I heard the applicant was here. Do you wish to speak, sir?
If you mind keeping it open, I will have some questions that he might want to answer.
Walk up to the microphone.
Okay, if you're calling me up, I have a couple questions.
He needs to identify himself for the...
Yeah, my name is Ryan Smith with Thomastown Builders. I'm actually a resident here in West Sacramento. I live on 1280 Riva Drive in the Riva condos. So,
My question had to do with the feasibility of changing the lot lines as proposed. Right now, the comment was it's infeasible to change the building design to save a 4 to 5 foot diameter oak tree that's in good condition, which currently is in the easternmost drive aisle. what's the feasibility of actually just adjusting the lot line, since that's what we're doing right now, 4 or 5 feet to accommodate that tree?
I think the one tree, I can put that map back up. I want to make sure we're talking about the right tree. The one next to the water pump station.
The one next to the water pump
That's the one-
station, that's the one you're already agreeing
Agreeing to save.
To save. I'm talking about the one on the eastern boundary near the wall Charlie was talking about earlier.
Yeah, unfortunately, that one lands right in the middle of our drive aisle, and for us to move the lot line, I guess that would be to the north to, our facility would just be too small. It would,
I guess
So
I'm
you're saying
talking about
make a
the line
jog,
between the lot line of parcel 2 to parcel 3. If you shrank parcel 2 and increase the size of parcel 3, you could
I
accommodate
see what you're saying.
the tree according to my map. But my map is really small
Really small.
Yeah.
relative
Yeah.
to
We,
that.
we, our was to keep the same lot line going behind Lowe's, to keep that wall and that berm. So I guess to answer your question, yes, you could move that whole lot line all the way out in front of that tree, and then we would just encroach into lot 2. It could be done, yeah.
Okay.
And I not necessarily don't want to really do that, because that's a lot of land, but,
I guess my only comment to staff, since we're not voting on the trees
Right,
this
right.
evening.
This is just
we're voting on the lot
map.
lines. I would prefer to keep, it's a 4 to 5 foot diameter, healthy oak tree that has obviously been here longer than we've been a city. My preference is to maintain the tree. And I'm not sure how that can better be accommodated other than moving the lot line. So I'm open to discussion or comment from the other commissioners.
I totally agree. But I mean, this is a very difficult thing to vote on, because we're only voting on one part of it. Because I think, I think we should be looking at the tree, we should have a map that we could see, because I can't really see what
Yeah.
I'm doing here. That would help me immensely. But then secondarily, I'm concerned about your neighbors behind you and what noise factors you're going to have. I mean, I think that noise analysis should be done.
to answer-
Or I think that, even more importantly, I think that you should extend that wall on top of the berm all the way to the end of the project to prevent even the possibility of disturbing your neighbors behind you. I mean, that's my preference. That's not our vote tonight, but I mean, that's my preference.
On the wall, we're now going between a commercial property and a residential property. Aren't you,
Yeah.
isn't there a wall required?
Yeah,
Just
we have a wall. We've been in this situation 12 other properties in the Sacramento area where our facilities adjoin a residential area. Our block walls are 11'4". I think that berm is actually a little bit higher than that. Yeah, and our
okay.
facility hours are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So at 7 p.m., we're actually shut down. Nobody can access the facility. There's no trucks. Not a single person can get in there. So as far as noise after 7 p.m., typically most cities or neighbors enjoy us because we shut down at 7 p.m. So, and then it is a full block CMU wall, acting as a sound barrier. But that berm is actually higher than where our wall will be at the toe of that berm, if that makes sense. So,
And that may be
Hopefully.
the answer to make it all be
Right.
right, but I don't know that.
right.
But we're not talking about that tonight.
Any other questions or comments?
My only comment would be, if you're up for entertaining adjusting the lot line, I would entertain pausing on the vote tonight and seeing it again, but I'm not sure what your timeline is.
Yeah. Well, I know we're under the gun to close on the property to actually buy it. We haven't closed escrow yet, and this is actually one of this tentative parcel map getting approval. So we did look at options, and that was one when we met with planning in regards to saving that one tree. We did give up quite a bit of space to rotate our building to the side to save that one heritage oak by the pump station, but we said that the other one just lands right, unfortunately, in the middle of a drive aisle, which, it'd be very difficult, I guess, for any project not necessarily our project, to try and save that tree. So, and then we can plant more trees out, you know. So,
Well, again,
yeah,
it's a big oak.
yeah.
So
No, I know it is. It is.
slightly sensitive on this. Staff, do you have any comments, recommendations?
Well, it certainly would be possible that if it were the commission's desire to, look at this again, we certainly could do that. The other option would be to provide direction tonight, and then the map that would actually come in for final parcel map, if that lot line were adjusted somewhat so that there was more room to work with the tree, we could potentially find that in a substantial compliance manner, where that would not need to return to the Planning Commission. You could act still tonight with that direction, and then when the project comes in for a final map, it's certainly within the realm possibility this could be a substantial compliance issue if that line were to move to the west by a certain amount of feet.
I'm sorry, David, I'm unclear. Can you cover that again? The
Well,
recommendation would be.
there certainly is an avenue for the Planning Commission to act this evening on this parcel map with either an additional condition or at least direction to us that the final map, when that comes in, would show that lot line relocated in the manner that you're desiring, and that we would likely be able to find that as substantial compliance to the approved tentative map. That way, we can move on this item this evening, but your desires could still be implemented. The only matter on this is something we would need to confer with the applicant on, because
Yeah.
I don't know what the status of their arrangements are with the landowner to acquire, but this would potentially mean them acquiring additional property, from the underlying landowner.
So, in hearing what the applicant says, though, it sounds like that is not an avenue they're entertaining pursuing at this time.
Can we ask the applicant? It's whether or not to approve the project on the condition that the lot line can be adjusted to allow the project without the removal of the tree.
Yeah, unfortunately, like you said, we have to go back to the seller and see if we can purchase more land of Lot 2, since because it would not be feasible for us to move that lot line for our project, no. Yeah.
Okay. I
Did I
didn't
answer your
realize
question?
you didn't have all three of these lots.
No. We're not the owners of all three. If we were, I'd gladly take more parcel 2, but no, that's something that we'd have to negotiate with the seller.
Any other questions?
It's a complicated one, I'm sorry.
No, it is.
Yeah, no.
As long as you're up there and he's thinking for a second. What are you going to do with the road you're going to build?
The access road?
Yeah, it's going to go to the end. What's the end?
It's just providing access for our facility.
Well, you're going to take it all the way to the end of the property line.
Correct, right to the end of the property
Are you
line.
going to have a bulb at the end or
Actually,
cul-de-sac?
we have a condition for access vehicles to use the facility as a turnaround. So there'll be a Knox box on our keypad. Everything's electronically gate operated. And the fire department will have a Knox box as well as emergency vehicles to use our facility as a turnaround.
Okay.
So,
Just curious how it was
Yeah.
going to work. Yeah.
and then of course tenants on the other side can use inside the facility to turn around in. So,
When we close the public hearing, we could probably talk about the trees and stuff and what we want to do with it.
That's true. The only reason I was keeping you up was,
that's fine.
or requesting, sorry, that you stay up, was whether or not we can get an answer if you'd be willing to adjust the lot line as a condition to move this project forward.
We would
but-
not like to, but
It
yeah.
doesn't sound like you'd, like is a bad term, if you'd be willing to do that, to move the project forward.
I'd have to say no. Unfortunately, I have to go back and talk to the seller, and like I said, negotiate if we can buy more parcel 2 at this point. Though, if we had to move the parcel line, then no, we wouldn't go forward. No.
Not to spoil my vote, but
Yeah,
I would disagree with the staff analysis of CEQA or request a continuance.
Okay, so we'll close the public hearing at this time. David, can we get some comments?
Well, I certainly, understand where
So you can sit down, sir.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thank you.
where Commissioner Liebig is coming from on this matter. So If it is the, consensus of the planning commission that you would want the applicant to explore this notion of acquiring additional, or potentially needing to acquire that additional land from the seller to see if that could be negotiated, then a continuance of this matter would be warranted, at this point in time, or the commission could move, take action this evening on the map, as is, with this matter and see how that vote went. But otherwise, if it was your desire to see if that could be possible, then we would need to continue this and come back to you at your next meeting.
So I'm not quite sure where all the commissioners stand on this. I know where Commissioner Liebig stands. I think I know where.
You know what, let me tell you, I'd love to hear the attorney talk to us and let me know before we do something too illegal. But I mean, we're only voting on the lot split. And I have no problem with the lot split. The problem I keep coming back to is that we talk about the lot split, and if that was it, I'd split the lot today, and I have no problem with that. But in these conditions and in everything else, we talk about the storage facility. And if you want me to talk about the storage facility, then I think we got to talk about Russ's Tree. I think we have to talk about the berm and the wall extending. I'd like to see exactly what they were going to put at the end of the street as a bulb, or it's just going to be a street going out into the property. But I don't even know if we're supposed to be talking about that stuff.
Well, and I'm not sure we'd be having this discussion at all if none of that was in there. If we're just talking about the lot split.
I agree.
Are we to understand that the storage facility is already compliant? I mean, there's...
Well, it's in design review now. That has not been approved yet, but it is a permitted use in the zone otherwise.
I think that answers it.
And if I could just respond briefly, the matter that's before you tonight is strictly whether the tentative parcel map is appropriate for this location. The CEQA analysis has disclosed that the tentative parcel map is exempt from further review, which is pretty common. And what that means is that any use that's permitted under the city's general plan and zoning plan can be permitted without further discretionary review. However, if a use comes before you and it's not a permitted use, for example, it needs a conditional use permit, that would need to come back before you, and that would receive further environmental review. The reason why there are two conditions with respect to trees, condition number 6 and 23, is because the city has a tree ordinance. I believe it's in chapter 8, because as a matter of policy, the city has decided that it wants to preserve trees to the extent possible. However, should a tree need to be removed in order to accommodate development, the project proponent would have to mitigate for that impact by either replacing the tree or by paying an in lieu fee. However, that's a result of a policy decision as opposed to an environmental impact that we would have to review by law.
So, if I understand correctly, we're not voting on the conditions, and we cannot take the proposed project into account based on our vote. We're just voting whether or not it meets the requirements for the parcel split. Is that correct?
That's correct. You should not consider the proposed project, the proposed storage facility in your decision today.
Unfortunately, the required findings and analysis for a tentative map include the removal of 3 heritage oak trees. So that is part of our decision tonight.
But that is a result of the city's tree permit ordinance as opposed to a result of a CEQA analysis that says that there are going to be the following environmental impacts and you have to mitigate for those. It's a distinct it's a distinct subtlety here, but they're a result of 2 completely different sources of law.
But you would never take a lot split and say you have to remove a tree. A lot split's just a lot split.
Right, and a lot of cities don't have these kind of tree permit ordinances, or if they do, the city of West Sacramento likes trees and wants to preserve them. So again, it's a matter of policy that we have this, that we have to review it for each development, whether or not the environmental document says or not. That's why you have these two conditions that specifically address that. It's a matter of complying with all of the city's ordinances.
So the conditions, though, are as a result of the project, not the lot split. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The conditions are.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
A result of the project, not the lot split. In other words.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The conditions are a result.
I'm sorry, the tree removal.
Is a result of the project being the tentative parcel map, having to comply with all of the city's ordinances, which include, for example, compliance with the building code, compliance with fire code, compliance with the tree ordinance. This just happens to be under the umbrella of the tree ordinance.
How it's written, unfortunately, it's included in the analysis for the parcel split. That's required on our vote, that these trees are going to be removed. And it's being interpreted as it's being removed as a result of the parcel split.
And I totally disagree. I think so what we're telling you is, if it's a lot split, there is no tree removals. You're not going to have a tree removal on a lot split per se. When you have a project that is included in the lot split, now you could have to do a tree removal.
Logically, yes.
I mean, a lot split's just a lot split. You don't care.
Well, part of it also, in all parcel maps and subdivision maps that we do require them to show trees, existing trees within the boundary of the map, and we do require them to show on the map any trees that are proposed to be removed. Even though the dividing the property is only on paper and that doesn't do anything out there in the real world, we still require that to be shown on the face of the map. In this case, since the tree issue is still pending and something we're working out, when we work on the mini storage project, we had to put conditions on this map to make it clear that since those things need to be shown on the map, that we are not at this time authorizing any tree removal. And at this point in time, there's 3 heritage trees, one of which is unhealthy and is recommended to be removed. One of them, however, one of them will be preserved, the one at the north end, and then there's still the matter of one healthy one left that needs to still be adjudicated according to the city's tree preservation policy in Chapter 8.24, I believe, of the municipal code.
Maybe I'm just getting a little, so I think what Charlie was saying, though, was, sans a project, if there was no project attached to this, it was just a lot split, there would be no tree removal before us. There would be no.
That's right. Under the Subdivision Map Act, legally speaking, all that would need to come before you is strictly the division of the parcels, the lines on a map, if you will. However, staff wanted to provide you with additional disclosure. The compliance with the city's tree ordinance isn't triggered until development actually occurs or a project happens. In this case, it just so happens that the project is permitted, so staff wanted to provide you with an opportunity to review that. But it could have provided you with just the bare minimum information about the tentative parcel map, the lines on the map.
So we would be making a motion to move this forward if we were to do so with clarification that we are only sort of voting on the lines on the map. Correct?
That's correct. But again, the reason why those 2 conditions that have to do with the tree ordinance are in there is because staff wants to ensure that there's compliance with that. Though technically, compliance wouldn't be necessary until a project actually came to fruition on one of.
And I appreciate that, but that isn't part of. Again, that's just not part of our decision-making process.
Right.
Any other comments or questions?
I'll bet we don't get a lot more extra information in the future, huh? I don't know.
I appreciate full disclosure.
Yeah.
I do. I still disagree with the findings of Section E of the required findings, especially as written and especially knowing
Yeah, I
that
think
the line could be moved
I
to
mean,
save
to
a
be
tree.
fair to everybody, I think maybe the best thing to do is postpone this till our next meeting and let staff and the applicant try to work through this just a touch.
I think that would be appropriate, given that we've bumbled over this one. Bumbled.
Well, I'm not
just a
sure, though,
little
where they could go. I'm not hearing that there's
Well,
sort of any
under
room
the-
for compromise in this matter.
Under the approval text, it says as amended by the commission. Do we have an amendment that we could even put out there? I'm not even, I mean, this is, going along the lines that this is a parcel split, do we actually have an amendment that we could put out there that would make sense for a parcel split?
Apparently none that the applicant would agree to.
So, you know, what's before us again is I understand what's in,
I
I understand
know.
what's in there, but what's before us are essentially the partial split. And the applicant said he does not own the other two parcels, so I don't think,
And we agree.
I don't think if we move this, first of all, I don't see where the room is for movement unless I'm missing something. The applicants make clear where they stand. So I, you know, and being fair to folks, I also want to be fair to the applicant, and if putting it off just to put it off, unless staff sees some room to, or some compromise that we're not seeing.
Well, essentially what we're, to preserve that one remaining tree on parcel 3, that would involve some degree of, you know, redesign of the project in its totality, you know, the circulation. Obviously, you know, although we're talking about the parcel map, but the proposed parcels are being configured in, you know, in this manner to at least partially, you know, accommodate the mini storage project and then other properties that will be for some other use, you know, in the future. So there certainly is at least a tangential relationship. But at this time, if the proposed, you know, lotting pattern is not adequate pursuant to one of the findings, then there's really a couple ways we can go. Either the project would have to be changed to be able to support that, whichever finding, and I think Commissioner Liebig, I think, supported, you know, finding E, or the commission could, you know, take action tonight if it could not make the required findings, then, you know, you would have to vote to not approve the parcel map. Third option, however, would be to continue this to our next meeting on May 2nd, to where we can try to get some further clarification and at least allow the applicant to explore if there are feasible options to reconfigure the project in a manner that would preserve that tree. And if that were not possible, then we'd be here, and then the commission could take its vote as to whether or not all the findings could be made. Our next meeting would be on May 2nd, I believe, which is in 2 weeks.
Chair Galvan, it's my recommendation that before the commission decides whether it wants to continue this matter or not, it provide the applicant with an opportunity to decide whether it prefers the continuance or a decision one way or another, so as to make a determination as to whether he'd like to appeal the decision and get a resolution sooner rather than later.
So at this time, we'll reopen the public hearing. I think the applicant indicated he'd like to speak.
Hi, my name is Tom Smith. I'm the applicant, along with my son, which you talked to. To give a little history about the tree, that seems to be the issue with everybody tonight. I went into escrow with the property 4 years ago with Village Financial. They wanted to put a storage facility back there because they wanted a buffer for the retail that they plan to put in the front. And the city, the shopping center, has been suffering ever since it's been built financially. I know Harry Elliott owns the shopping center, and so they thought by me putting a storage facility back there that would give a buffer for additional retail businesses that come into the area, and that would help the area. So I tried to get more width in the back there, and I couldn't because they wanted me. That's why we squared it off like that, where I have the piece along the single-family homes. I have facilities in Roseville, Rockland, Elk Grove that have the same situation, where we have single-family homes adjacent to a storage facility. And the fire department requires a certain width of aisleways to get fire equipment and circulation. So what I've done to satisfy the developer, the owner of the property, which plans to put different retail businesses back there, I put a building on the back property line with about 11-foot wall, which is like a sound buffer for the single-family homes. And then I put a middle building, and I put another building next to the retail center that would be developed from that. So that's why the site is developed like it is. I know you're here tonight just to look at the parcel map, and yet the word that storage came up, so I wanted to give you a little bit of history about the storage. The public was notified. There's been no opposition to the storage facility at all from a sound, noise, and the developer thought that if we put a storage back there, it would help them with the retail centers because of the big trucks coming in the middle of the night unloading like Lowe's does. We're not like that at all. So, but the width that we have back there for that is in that, for the fire department. Now, the tree up where the office is, we moved a 10,000-foot building to a different angle so we could save that one tree, and that was feasible to do that. This one tree that we're talking about tonight is right in the middle of an aisleway. And I talked to the developer about it, the landowner, if we could move more to the west, and he didn't want me to go to the west because it's going to interfere with the retail businesses he's going to put in. And I've offered to mitigate the tree and plant more trees, you know, whatever I can do to, you know, either financially support the city of their tree mitigation or put a tree someplace else. But I wanted to give you a little history about that site, that it wasn't just designed for storage. They're trying to play into effect to help the retail business in the city of West Sacramento, and they want to develop that shopping center. And I told them I wouldn't develop the storage facility unless I had frontage on Washington. So they gave me a little section you saw on my site map there. I think I've got 150 foot of frontage. Well, I would normally like to be right on the front. So, but then they said, okay, we'll give you the frontage, but then you take along the back section along the back there, and that'll help us with the buffer for the retail business that will eventually come into that area. So the tree situation, the one tree we're talking about, you know, I don't mind planting more trees, big trees. I know it's an old tree. We've already moved a 10,000-foot building to accommodate one. And like I said, tonight I think we're up here just for the parcel map, but now that we have these conditions that you brought up, Russ, about the storage facility, it's plain in effect, and I see where the Planning Commission would have some conditions about that. So, but I just wanted to give you a little history about what's happened out there. If you look at our project, it's kind of squared off, you know, and that's so they can help with the retail. So when they bring a retail client in there, he doesn't have to worry about a jog in his property, because any retail property goes in there, they're going to have trucks in and out of there.
Right. And
they don't want to have a jog in the building at all. So I hope I've answered any other questions you might want to ask me about it. I'm willing to answer any questions you might have, and we can go from there on it.
Actually, I appreciate the description. And this is the size map we're looking at.
Yeah, I know. It's hard for you to see that.
I actually didn't realize there were buildings around the outside of this.
There's
I
three
thought those
buildings
were
on the
actually
perimeter and one in the
drive-ups.
middle. And then originally I had proposed a cul-de-sac at the end of that street. And engineering didn't want a cul-de-sac there because they say that ultimately that street's going to continue on to Jefferson. And I kind of questioned that, but engineering had indicated to me that that street would continue on it someday. It's not a full width street, but it is a circular street that will go through. And so they said, no, we want you just to build a street right to where it ends, what shows on our map right now. And the street will go on. It will continue on. Because I had originally proposed a cul-de-sac in there. And then emergency equipment, to answer that, that's why we have the aisleways in the storage facility. There's emergency equipment, fire, police, whoever, could get through our property and go out to the alleyways of Lowe's. And then we will also have an emergency gate at the end of the street where the fire department could go out also by the pump station. And at that pump station, there is a road that will go out and connect into the single-family homes. Thank you. I don't know if I've answered any more questions or enlightened any more to you a little bit about what happened, but how we developed that site with the buildings like that.
I think the only question was if you'd entertain a continuance. And that's because we haven't counted votes.
Pardon me?
The only question was if you would entertain a continuance.
In regards to the tree issue?
In regard to the project vote, it would push the vote.
What would you want me to work on in this continuance time? I have to deal with staff, and I'm just asking you, what would you want me to do during this continuance time? Is it a tree thing, or is it a site plan, or what?
Counting votes and seeing the look on everybody's face.
Well, this gentleman over here said he had to oppose from voting. Charles, it is. And I don't know, Charles mentioned there was a lot of facilities. There's only one other facility in town. That's all that's planned.
You
right
should
now.
see the one on Jefferson, they're just starting.
Yeah, Jeff's the only one, yeah, it's been postponed for 4
And the one down
years.
the street from you, about 2 blocks.
Yeah,
And then there's 2 over on Harbor and Evergreen.
we've done
I
our
just hope
marketing.
there's not much more property we can put these
Yeah.
things on. That was my comment.
I see.
I think we have enough
Yeah.
self-storage already, but that's okay.
It's only, in my opinion, I'm sorry, for me.
And I don't mind the continuance, that doesn't bother me at all. If you want to continue it until May 2nd, or, I don't have a problem with that at all. I just want to know what I can do to help you, help staff or the planning commission to continue on with it.
My vote will be to alter the lot line to allow a business that will fit on the site without the tree removal. And that's it. And whether or not the continuance will allow that. If it won't, then there's probably no reason to continue.
So we'll close the public hearing at this time.
You're saying alter the lot line to accommodate the tree?
To accommodate business.
To accommodate what?
To accommodate business. The goal would be
We'll
to.
open the public hearing at this time.
I'm sorry. The goal would be to configure the lot lines so you could provide a lot size that would accommodate a business without the tree removal.
How would you have any, I don't know what you're trying to, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me to accommodate, change the lot line to accommodate a business. Would this be a business on parcel 2 or on my parcel, or?
To accommodate the business that you want on parcel 3, you adjust the lot line between 2 and 3. If that's not feasible, then there's.
We tried that just to let you know, I wanted to do that, but the landowner didn't prefer. He wanted me to basically have a straight line across there, because when he puts a business back there, of course, you know, retail businesses, all their window front and everything is in the front of the street, and in the back is all their loading and unloading. And that's where the trucks are going to go through. And if there's a jog back there, it's going to make it hard for an 80-foot semi-truck to go around that in the back. So I don't know if.
Just judging by the shape of your lot, you're probably at the limits of your flexibility, is what you're telling us.
Yeah, my fire aisles right now meet the fire department standard within a foot. So my drive aisles, I have 2 drive aisles, and the only 2 buildings are the 2 perimeter buildings. So it's a lot, I can't narrow my drive aisles anymore, or the fire department would not approve my project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So at this time, we'll close the public hearing. Just one other question of staff. Even if the parcels were divided differently, conceivably a project could come through there that doesn't require our approval, that would require the removal of that tree as well, correct?
Well, yeah, in either case, are subject to the city's tree removal, or tree preservation ordinance, which has some substantial teeth in it, that particularly if heritage trees are proposed to remove, the mitigation burden, either in terms of a replanting program or dollars and cents, is substantial. It was reminded to me that the project, that apartment project that was approved went through the commission not that long ago, that's commenced construction just down behind Rayleigh Field. Their tree mitigation in dollars and cents was substantial, in the 6 figures. And so it is not an insignificant amount of money if it comes to removal of a heritage tree. So I don't want everyone to think that it's tree removal and once it's done, that's it. There's a significant burden required by the ordinance. And so what we have here tonight, and what I think what Commissioner Liebig would be requesting, really ideally, is if this project could be reconfigured in some manner to preserve that tree. It's unknown at this time if that could occur feasibly. That would require additional consultation with the landowner. But at this time, there certainly is the tree ordinance that is applied, and certainly this is not a new matter. We have been discussing this for some time with the applicant and through our urban forest manager. So there is a means to address this as a matter of policy through the city's existing ordinance.
Well, and so what I'm hearing, though, David, is that there is not any room to wiggle on that.
Well, that is the
With
city's
this project the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, that is the city's designated policy dealing with tree removals.
I'm sorry, to adjust the lot line to accommodate that tree. I'm hearing from the applicant that this is sort of set.
Well, if that is indeed the case, then we're pretty much at the limits of what the tree preservation ordinance, provides us. We would certainly prefer, not to have to remove any trees, especially significant ones. Occasionally it does happen and is unavoidable. So in this case, we had 3. One of them is unhealthy. We were able to make an adjustment on the north end to keep the heritage tree there, but been unable to reach a solution for the one on parcel 3 toward the southeastern portion of this map. So,
Okay, thank you. So I'll bring it back to the commission.
Make a motion.
Get a motion. Need a motion.
I don't think you
Unless-
want my motion, so.
Unless there's an amendment that we could present right now, I would move that we approve the requested tentative parcel map request.
We have a motion.
Minus condition 35.
Minus 35, which,
Moved by,
and
we
we'll underline in bold condition 6.
have a motion by Commissioner Olson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Is that 4? All those against say nay.
Nay.
Okay, so 3-2, the motion carries. All right.
Does he have, do you read the appeal on that
so
approval?
I'll read the map appeal procedure, please. Any interested party may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission in this matter to the City Council by filing a written appeal with the City Clerk within 10 days of tonight's action, and the appeal must be accompanied by the appropriate filing fee.
So, David, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chair Perez, as I have to excuse myself at 7, so I'm going to let her start this one and carry it through.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 3.
Okay, item number 3 is a variance request to the parking setback to allow for conversion of a garage into habitable space. The project is located at 3210 Half Moon Bay Circle. The applicant runs an existing licensed daycare facility from the residence and is looking to expand the daycare into the garage space, as she currently uses portions of all rooms of her residence for the daycare. Conversion of the garage would eliminate the 2 required off-street parking spaces as required in the city's municipal code. The driveway is 20 feet long, and that's not long enough to accommodate 2 19-foot-long parking spaces plus the required 5-foot parking setback. The applicant has requested a variance to the parking setback from 5 feet to 1 feet to allow for parking on her driveway. Staff believes that the findings for this project can be made. Although the property is similar in size and shape to the surrounding residential properties, the site does include the aforementioned daycare, which serves 14 children. Staff also conducted a drive-by survey of the neighborhood and discovered it is commonplace for residents to park on their driveways in this area. The applicants themselves currently do not park their vehicles in the garage, but rather park them on the driveway currently. As the applicants are doing something commonplace within the area, staff believes this does not constitute a grant of special privileges, and the city currently has a deficit of daycare facilities. This has been a chronic problem pretty much from incorporation. In 2003, the Yolo County Child Care Planning Council produced a report that showed that there was a deficit of child care spaces in the city of over 1,000 spaces, and that's before the city concluded its last big growth boom. In 2010, for the last census count, the census showed that there was nearly 4,100 children under the age of 5 living within the city. There are 56 licensed daycare homes in the city. If you consider if all of them happen to take care of the maximum number of 14 children, that's only 784 spots. So the city is definitely in need of good child care in the city. And it's staff's interpretation that the special circumstances are due to the fact that providing adequate daycare services in the city has been a stated goal of the city since incorporation. The city's general plan does contain a child care element. It was one of the first in the state to do so. This project does meet the general plan policies for improving child care services within the city. I'd also like to note daycare is a permitted use in the R1B zone. We did receive one email in opposition to the project. That was provided to you in a correspondence earlier this evening. The reason for the opposition was traffic congestion from expansion of the project and the effect of the project on local property values. This concludes staff's presentation, and staff respectfully requests that the Planning Commission conduct the public hearing, approve the requested variance subject to the findings and conditions in the staff report. The applicant is here in the audience should you have any questions for her.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff before I open the public hearing? Okay, I'll open the public hearing. I have a few requests to speak.
Applicant first.
Oh, sorry, the applicant first.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Stephanie Deering. Yes, you have a question? Oh, okay. I've run a high-quality daycare here in West Sacramento for 5 years. My husband and I have owned the home for 9 years. For the last 3 years, I've been full with 14 children. Our house is 1,300 square feet. When we bought the home 9 years ago, didn't anticipate opening the daycare. 5 years ago when we decided, and now being full, we just a limited space. Expecting another one, so we're just trying to get more play space and area for the kids. If we didn't have the daycare, we wouldn't be asking for this variance, and have also talked to the staff about if we do ever move or shut down the daycare for any reason, we would convert it back to a working garage. From the outside, it'll stay completely the same, just have the wall and everything that's needed inside. And we've tried every option. We owe more than is on our home right now, and so we've tried to buy a bigger home. We looked at building something in our backyard, but the setbacks to the fence we had to deal with, and so this is where we're at right now. As far as parking, we've always parked in our driveway. We've used our garage for storage, and both of our cars have been comfortably parked in our driveway, as well as other houses in the neighborhood. And that's it.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay.
Any
Can I ask her
questions?
one question?
Oh, sure.
Yes.
My question is, will the garage door remain up, and
Yes.
then you'll build a wall inside the garage door so it just looks like a normal house over there?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll call up Leah Miller. Please state your name.
Hello, my name's Leah Miller. Good evening. My two children have attended Stephanie's Little Busy Bees daycare for the last 3 years and have been quite happy and grown and enriched in that environment. And I'm here speaking on behalf and support of their expansion of their house to allow for that livable space to be accommodated. As she had already explained, it wouldn't change the face of the building in any way whatsoever, and I can attest that they have tried every option possible in looking for a home. As a realtor, I can attest that their home they do owe more than it's worth, and so moving to a new home isn't the option for them right now, and they're trying to stay in their home and do the right thing by staying there and to continue their livelihood in earning income and continuing their business and providing quality child care for families in our community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Pagani. Did I say that right? Pagani.
I'm a neighbor of the Deerings, and I've known them for about 5 or 6 years, and they run a great little daycare there, and they're doing the best they can to use the space that they have to continue with their business. And I also heard that they were trying to expand, in the backyard, but there were problems with that, and so I think this is a good solution for them. And I don't believe there is a parking problem on the street. There's plenty of space along the road on both sides. There's parking next to the school, and they park their cars in the driveway. I've never seen a parking issue there. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron Eastland.
Hello, my name is Erin Eastland. I've been living in West Sac for 8 or 9 years. We've been using Miss Stephanie's daycare for about 2 years on and off, full-time for the past year. My 2 kids go there, and I can say that she has awesome daycare. When I was looking for a daycare originally, I can't tell you how many places I saw, about 20 to 30 places that I called. Places were full, places kind of gave me a weird vibe. Like, to her home was like, we walked in and I looked at my husband and I was like, we're done looking. This is the place. And so we're so grateful that she exists. And I want to support her in converting her garage into some more usable space. She does have a relatively small home for hosting 14 children every day, especially since my son can, like, you know, go crazy. So I'm just here to support her, and we've never had problems finding a parking space outside of our home when we dropped our kids off or pick our kids up, and usually that's around the time when people are leaving for work and coming home, and so the street's usually pretty easy to, you know, find a parking spot, and sometimes there's no other cars on the street either. So
Thank you. Leah Pears.
Hi, I'm Leah Pears. I'm their next door neighbor. I'm the one that would be affected the most by this conversion or their car issues. But I've been there 3 years. I've owned the home for 3 years. They've had their cars, the truck and the car, outside their garage for all the time I've been there. I've never had an issue with it. They're great neighbors, clean and wonderful. We are across the street from the school, so in essence, it's congested all the time at 8 o'clock in the morning. I go to work at various times, in and out. I do notice that their daycare parents come at scattered times. I never see a line in front of the house like you would see in a normal daycare setting. So what I do notice is that the parents come at different times. So I never see people 2 or 3 cars in a line next to my house. So I'm happy with that, and I'm satisfied that this would be no difference than what I've been dealing with for the last 3 years, and I love them as neighbors. They're great citizens of West Sacramento, and you guys should be really proud to have a daycare like this here in the city. I'm from West Sacramento, born and raised, from Broderick, so I came back from El Dorado Hills. And if I saw that something was going to be out of the ordinary in this neighborhood, I love this neighborhood because it doesn't have all those cars and junk cars in front of the houses. And that's why I moved there. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any questions for the applicant? I'll start at the end.
No questions.
For me?
No questions? I just have one question. Sorry. It states here that you have 14 children. Is that the max number of children?
Yeah, max for large family license is 14.
Okay, so it's not like expanding this?
You can never, I could never expand more. It's just I'm staying within, I have 12 every day, like 14 is my max, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, I'll close the public hearing. Any questions?
No.
Just a statement. I don't see this as an expansion of use. I know that was a concern. And, well, conditions don't seem to be changing on this. I generally don't approve of these type of projects where the cars aren't allowed to be in the garage, but at the same time, we're not changing conditions. And if it's, I don't also see it as a special privilege. So I just wanted to be clear on that. I'm in favor of the project.
I have to agree. I think the project's fine. The only thing I was concerned about was parking. I guess I was concerned a little bit about 14 kids being at that house, too. God bless you.
Not our problem.
I mean, my 2 grandkids kill me. I have to take a nap when they leave. But, I mean, Kathy, is there a limit as to what can be in a house? 14 is the limit? Do you know?
14 is the limit that is allowed by the state. She is licensed from the Department of Social Services to run a large family daycare, and they dictate the maximum number of children, which is 14.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a definite need in our city, so I think it's a great idea. And I don't think it's a special privilege either.
Okay, can I get a motion?
I would move that we approve with no amendments.
I'll second. Oh, I'll let Charlie second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes.
I'll read the appeal procedure. Any interested party may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission in this matter to the City Council by filing a written appeal with the city clerk within 15 days of tonight's action, and the appeal must be accompanied by the appropriate filing fee.
Great, thank you. Okay, on to item number 4.
We could let them all leave, because it's going to get real boring now.
Now we have no audience.
I know.
No
So,
offense on whoever's going to make this next presentation, but the audience did leave.
Mr. Tilley, I think you're up.
Oh, well, I'll manage. I do have a PowerPoint presentation for you on this item, but by way of background, tonight, we are here talking about the housing element. This is an element of the city's general plan, and we don't talk about these matters very often. That's only because the housing element only rolls around every 5 years, and since some past legislation has been passed, it's now only going to roll around every 8 years. So tonight we are here to talk about housing element, and we're here as part of our efforts to try to get as much input and exposure to our housing element update as possible. We've been already to the Housing Advisory Commission. We've met offline with some interest groups. We will be going back to the HAC next month and also to council, and with our goal here of trying to move this along and make sure we are certified on time. So as I mentioned, the housing element is one of the 7 mandated elements in our general plan. It looks at housing needs throughout our community for each planning period, and it is for all segments of our community. As I mentioned, we are now in an 8-year planning period, so this current housing element that we're working on will take us through 2021. And what's unique about the housing element compared to all the rest of the general plan is it actually requires formal approval by the state. So we will submit our draft housing element update to the state this summer. They have a minimum 60 days to review that. They will provide us some input on it. We'll make the necessary changes that they're looking for, and then we will have that reapproved by the City Council and then submit for final certification. That final certification must be received by October 31st of this year. Apologize. How do I advance this? Okay. Cindy, can you back it up a couple of slides, please? Just by way of background, why the housing element is always very important. It is a legal responsibility that we have to have that certified housing element. By having that certified housing element, keeps us eligible for various funding streams through the state grant programs, CDBG funding, things of that matter. And it also is a matter of, if we do not have a compliant housing element, we are very vulnerable in many respects to challenges under housing element law. So it is very important that we have a certified housing element and that we keep it, remain consistent with it through the planning period. These are kind of a summary of the laws that have been passed at the state level that affect the housing element over the last few years, in particular since our last housing element update was done. I think the SB 375 is important because that's what established the 8-year time period for certified on time. And then the SB 812 and 244 are the ones that have definitely been passed since our last housing element update. Fortunately, these have not changed housing element law substantially. We are now looking at a need to account for persons with developmental disability needs in our housing element. And the SB 244 is somewhat unique. It doesn't have a lot of application to us based on our situation, but what it does request or require all jurisdictions to look at is those communities that may exist on the fringe of an incorporated city but that are still far away from a county seat. So in our case, since our sphere of influence is coterminous with our city limits, this really is not meaningful to us. But in other communities where they have a sphere of influence that goes well beyond their city borders, which is common, they do need to look at those populations that may exist kind of in those what I'll call tweener areas, if you will, to ensure that those populations are being served. So we do have an analysis on this, and we will hold a public hearing on that analysis, albeit a brief analysis, when we get forward to City Council. So how this all process begins is the State Department of Finance determines what the statewide regional housing need is projected to be on a statewide basis. And this is, again, for this 8-year planning period. That number is broken up then regionally to the councils of government. And then the SACOG, which is our local council of government, then breaks down that regional number amongst its jurisdictions. So you can see that the Sacramento region's number is just about 105,000 housing units are projected needing to be provided to accommodate population growth over the next 8 years. So SACOG takes the regional number, then further allocates that. So our number now for West Sacramento is 5,977, so just Scotia under 6,000 units we need to plan for over this planning period. And amongst those further are broken down by the 5 standard income categories. So you can see that we have a wide variety of income categories, and those are the income ranges that are associated with those income categories. And you can see how those are broken down. So we have about a little less than half are for above moderate income, and the remainers are for moderate income and below. But so we have a high number in West Sacramento. We usually do for total number of units, which on a regional basis, certainly there makes sense behind that. So the housing element, existing housing element, contains various goals and policies, and then programs on how to implement them. We are not making substantial changes or proposing substantial changes to most of these programs, but for the ones that we are, I'll highlight those as we continue on. This is the first goal, and then you have in your packet, you have attached to it the red line version of our existing housing element and the changes that we're making. These are fairly standard matters that are addressed, in there. We're working on the land inventory now. We're largely updating the one from last time. Since that was done, not many of those properties have been developed, so they're still available. We address these various programs that we will continue to do, going forward into this new housing market and era, in the post-redevelopment era, but we may be doing some things a little bit differently than we have done before, but it's maintaining some of the similar objectives. Another goal in the housing element deals with the rehabilitation and preservation of existing housing stock. One of the best ways to provide housing to persons in your community is to attempt to preserve the housing you already have. And so the city for many years has had an extensive rehabilitation program for housing, and that's something we will continue to do as funding and opportunities permit. The next goal related to energy efficiency. This is something that has been introduced in the housing element since last time. Last time it came around, so we have accomplished those goals and continue to do that through the Build It Green program that has been adopted and applied by our building division. And so these are important matters for energy efficiency for all folks in our community. And of course, we do try to have a goal in there to try to move toward that panacea of jobs, housing balance. Much of this is accomplished through trying to have more mixed-use developments. And so we certainly will anticipate seeing much more of that along West Capitol and many of our other infill areas. And many of our commercial corridors are actually good targets to see more mixed-use development come to town. And of course, we continue to provide and seek funding to help with infrastructure improvements that help support housing projects in our community. That is a key effort and goal that the city will maintain even in the post-redevelopment era. And of course, this is a very important thread through any housing element, is providing housing for folks of all income levels, disabilities, and special needs. So these are all programs that we can have in our housing element and continue to work on implementing. Condominium conversion is one that doesn't come up very often, but that's actually if a rental apartment project wanted to convert into condominiums for sale. We do have an ordinance that addresses that. It is something we need to update, but there are a lot of provisions under state law that we would follow in the event that any apartment project did want to convert to an ownership status, although we don't foresee that occurring soon. So part and parcel with the housing element is how the city deals with affordable housing. And so we have ordinances that implement the goals in the housing element as they pertain to affordable housing. And the city, since 2003, when the 2 housing element rounds ago was adopted, we have been requiring affordable housing on a citywide basis. However, that housing was provided in a kind of 2 different formulas, if you will, for one that was inside the redevelopment project area, which was Ordinance 1510, or should I say Municipal Code Section 1510, and then outside the redevelopment project area was codified in Chapter 1540. And so those programs were something we've had and implemented, and even though the details of those don't necessarily always come before the Planning Commission, they are important policy objective, and so it's important to get the Planning Commission's input. But more recently, in the last few years, implementation of affordable housing has been challenged by a couple of things. One is that there's no more redevelopment, and which was our principal tool in providing affordable housing, and also obviously the housing market has gone down substantially since that time and has made providing affordable housing, particularly toward the moderate income levels, virtually impossible because the market prices have come down to a matter to where a moderate income person could largely find housing in our community. So under our existing ordinances, which we propose to change as a part of the housing element update, we will be changing these particular formulas for how affordable housing has been provided in our community. Previously in the redevelopment area for rental projects, we did the 5, 5, and 5. So 5%, so if a 100-unit project, 5 of them would go to very low, 5 low, and then 5 to a moderate. And then if for sale projects, we'd be doing 5% low and then 10% moderate. And of course the units need to be generally on site. There was some degree for flexibility on that. And our goal has been and will remain an emphasis on production of units, in the real world, since we do have a real world demand and need for housing in all economic segments. So the goals of our changes to our inclusionary housing program is obviously we're trying to be more efficient, and we're also trying to target the lower income spectrum as we continue to see a need at the low and very low, and in many cases extremely low income segments of our community. And so for this planning period coming up, and what we anticipate with the housing market being what it will be, we feel those where the greatest need are, so that's what we're going to try to target. And we are going to provide some degree of flexibility for alternatives to production on site, but remaining with a principal goal of having production. And many of these concepts were included in the Community Investment Action Plan that was adopted by the Council in May of last year, which is really our post-redevelopment strategy for how we're going to continue to do redevelopment type activities, of which providing affordable housing is one of those. So we will eliminate the reference to that section of the ordinance that deal with the redevelopment project area, since there is no redevelopment project area anymore. And we will also eliminate the moderate income requirement, and then and we will amend 1540 accordingly, so it does read that it is truly citywide and not just outside the redevelopment, former redevelopment area. So what we will propose to go forward and through our housing element is we will move to a 10% production requirement. However, that will be 5% very low and 5% low in any rental project, and then a 10% low in for sale projects. Previously, this had the moderate income requirement on it, so we have essentially eliminated the moderate income requirement, and we'll proceed much with what we have been producing previously. But these are the areas that we feel where the greatest need are, and also these are the projects, when they target these segments of the community, are the projects that are most likely to secure funding to construct them. So there may be, we are proposing some degree of alternatives to production. Needs to be considered on a project-by-project basis, principally by the city manager. But these would be our objectives, going forward in terms of how affordable housing is produced in the community.
David, this is my one question, so I figured it might just be easier to stop here and ask. Is that increase from 5% to 10% voluntary, or is that a requirement of the state, federal agencies?
No, this is a change that we're making to comply with housing element law and help show how we are going to meet our RHNA numbers. We need to demonstrate to the state how we would accommodate and produce the units that are allocated to us in the RHNA that's provided to us. And so this is our attempt to show in this segment of it how we would achieve getting those units produced.
Thank you.
So just upcoming schedule, we will be going back to HAC next month for some further input from the Housing Commission, and then to Council, where we will present the housing element and seek their approval to send the changes to HCD for certification. Once we receive those back, we'll go back to City Council for final adoption and then submit to HCD. So with that, I'll close this presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have regarding our housing element update.
Thank you, Mr. Tilley. Do we have any questions for Mr. Tilley?
First,
Commissioner Moore.
Sure. I do have a couple questions for you. If we're taking our numbers and we're going to eliminate, I got to figure out what slide I'm on. I'm on slide number 4. This makes it real easy. It talks about the different categories of people. Okay? I might be on 6, David. Okay. I forgot I got to count the first page too, huh?
Page 3.
Page 3. The bottom of page 3. Okay?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I couldn't count the slide number. So if we're going to only deal with moderate, well, we're not going to deal with moderate at all.
Yeah,
right?
we will no longer require moderate income
Which
units.
would be moderate income and above moderate.
Yeah, well, above moderate means just anything, but we will
I understand.
Yeah, we will no
So,
longer.
but I mean, I'm trying to get to the number of housing units we're really playing with. And we're really not going to do anything with extremely low income then either. Is that correct?
Well, currently, we are not mandating that extremely low-income units be provided within a project. However, it's likely in the real world that an affordable housing developer will include those because the deeper targeting projects tend to be the most competitive for funding.
Well, then, is the number of housing units that we're really going to try to accomplish just the very low income and the low income, which is 1,500 units?
No. What this is, we need to demonstrate to the state that we have land adequately zoned and available to produce this total number of units. And a subset of that is showing that we have adequate land available at the appropriate densities, because generally it's the practice that the low and very low income units, things of that nature, do tend to come in much higher density projects than in standard single family for sale homes. So what we're continuing to be working on is what's called our land inventory. So this is a planning exercise to show that we can accommodate this total number of units, but that also that's from a quantitative standpoint. But from a qualitative standpoint, we also need to show that we have enough land available, the appropriate densities, to be able to provide units.
Well, I was just trying to figure out, because you said we're really worried about 5,900 homes here, but really we're only going to be dealing with about 1,500 homes that we're real concerned about.
Well, the housing element addresses all housing in all economic segments. However, our affordable, in the affordable subset of that, we are proposing to now only require low and very low units to be produced, not moderate anymore, and we never required extremely low previously.
Right.
Although we have had them built in town.
You know, well, I guess my question starts with, and I've read in the newspapers in the past few months that some of the cities in our region, and that's what we're dealing with, are getting out of affordable housing or reducing their numbers extremely low. Have you heard that too?
The biggest one that's been in the paper was Folsom.
Right.
And they got sued and they lost. So they are now implementing a program similar to what we are talking about.
Are other
this evening.
cities reducing their numbers though?
Some other communities has been in the news. They are looking at reducing the percentage that they require.
Right.
Everyone is trying to deal with the dissolution of redevelopment and obviously the changes in the housing market and what people perceive that to be and will be like for this next 8-year planning period. I know Sacramento County has been in the news. So we
And
are.
That's what I'm reading too, is, I mean, you know, first off, your developer doesn't want to participate real heavily because it's so costly. And how are we going to participate? We participated before with redevelopment funds, right?
Well, partially, yeah, and generally the mode that we have been in over the last few years has been in a gap financing mode, to where we will use some of our funds to contribute to a larger pot of monies that come from various sources to help produce an affordable housing project. So we are setting this up in a manner to where we feel like, A, the true need is, but also trying to have a little more flexibility than what we have on the books now, but to also try to position ourselves to be in the real world, to be in the best possible manner to help produce affordable units, you know, in the real world, which typically come from a myriad of financing sources, including, you know, city funds, and which we are still doing through our housing trust fund that was established in the after the redevelopment dissolution. So projects like the Rivermark Apartments that just had the groundbreaking in the Bridge District, and then the Delta Lane Senior Project that we're working on right now, will all have some city funds put into those, but those are a portion of a much larger pie of funding sources.
Where do we get that money from? From the general fund?
Well, we have the Housing Trust Fund, and we have had, you know, even though redevelopment has been eliminated, some funds that would otherwise come to the city in the form of redevelopment funds will still come back to the city as a taxing agency. So we do have some funds that retain, and the council, as part of the Community Investment Action Plan, you know, did vote to essentially, you know, preserve some of those funds for in the Housing Trust Fund. And then also in this, for those projects that don't actually produce units but that may pay an in lieu fee, those fees would go into that pot as well, and then that can be used as gap financing on a larger project.
Which may help get a project off the ground.
Well, then, in our mind, it also helps us get more units, quite frankly.
You know, we talked about a couple elements here, and I mean, all you're asking for us tonight is just to give you some comments anyway,
yes.
Right? And one of them is that we need to have the low income and the very low income and take care of those people as best we can to try to help them a little bit to find housing. And yet the last housing project we didn't have anybody to fill the housing project. And that was the one down by Johnny's Time Out, I don't know the street down there.
I think that's Sycamore you're referring to. And
I'm sorry?
I think that's Sycamore.
Sycamore?
You're referring to.
And they went and we built all those nice apartments on West Capitol Avenue. Great idea, and they went to fill the thing, and we couldn't fill but not even half of it, I don't believe, and had to go on a whole outsource program to Woodland and Davis and Sacramento and Rancho Cordova and everywhere we could to try to put people into the apartments. And it was on the news and in the newspapers talking about how we just didn't have the people. Are we going to use stuff like that showing that we should be reducing the number of units that we have to have?
Well, we are certainly reducing the number of total affordable units that we're going to be requiring by eliminating the moderate, which we had been doing before. Affordable housing, is a world unto itself, and how those projects are financed. They do need to do their market studies because the financing for those is brutally competitive, and so.
Well, I guess my concern, my comment and concern is, there's no reason for us to build affordable projects if we don't have people that need to go into the affordable projects. For us to have to go outside our community to fill the project does not seem like a realistic thing to me. But I know we were in Natomas. I remember a kid from Natomas talking, somebody from Sacramento. They all go, oh yeah, well they begged us to come over here to go in the project because they couldn't fill it. That concerns me that we build projects, not for our people that live here, because I'm all for that, but we have to go outside the community to fill the project. That's a little disheartening to me. So I just want to make sure that what we're building is what we truly need. And I don't know how we find that out.
Well, I'm just looking at some census figures actually related to the prior project we were considering, but there's some latest in here that in our community, almost 20% of the persons in our community are below the poverty level, which is a very unfortunate circumstance, and that's definitely higher than on a statewide basis. And also our median income in our community here is quite a bit under even the countywide average. So we definitely have a population, a substantial portion of our population that needs housing that's affordable, in one way, shape, or another. I'm not familiar with the peculiarities of what happened with that project you're describing. I recall that was a family project. They had large units in there, so it was kind of limited to the number of folks that could go in there. But these are projects that take, in many cases, several years to come to fruition. And so, like the Rivermark that just had the groundbreaking, we've been working on that since about 2009, and just finally had a groundbreaking. Right. And so there's much that goes into this. And
well, I just think my comment is that we need to make sure we're taking care of our people. We don't need to go outside. My last comment, and I do have a last comment, so is, the homes that we're building today, and we're not building a lot, but we're still building quite a few. I was out by Our Lady of Grace, and you make a right after that. And there's a whole string of about 10 houses they're building out there. Like somebody came up with a brilliant idea they'd build them, but I don't know what they sell for. And I was just wondering how that might play into all our numbers, what the current selling price is for those type of homes, or the ones next to them, the smaller homes, the ones over here by the baseball park.
Yeah, the homes that I'm familiar with out there and out in Serenity Cove, which is being built by Discovery, now today they're going for about $350 and up, and so those are well out of the reach even of a moderate income, right, income buyer. Certainly prices fluctuate, and they definitely are up somewhat right now because there's not much inventory out there, particularly on the resale market. But to us, that's not where the need is or has been. It has been in the lower segments of the community, and folks in that lower segment of the community, those are out of the stratosphere, for them. In the low median income in this for a family of four in our county is about $75,000, but the median household income just in our community, according to census, is about $54,000. So, so basically, what that's indicating is for household levels, roughly half of our community is probably at moderate income, or lower. And from a household standpoint.
If you're going to take this to the council, I guess my comment would be, with interest rates being what they are, and I have no idea exactly what they are today, with the interest rates being so low, the housing prices being substantially lower than they used to be 4 or 5 years ago, you might want to say, this house or this level will buy a house at this price. And it might make it, for someone like me, a little easier to understand. But, I don't know how high a price home you could buy in this area for that because of the interest rates and everything being so low. So, we might be a little bit better off than we think, but I don't know that. That's it. Thank you.
Commissioner Olson?
Just a couple of comments. Good job on the draft here, David and Raul and whoever else worked on it. Kind of touch on what Commissioner Moore said. I guess the problem I mean, it isn't the work you guys did. It's more the requirement that they're asking you to report on, and the true need, the real supply and demand of housing. I don't see where, well, like I said, this is not a criticism of what work you guys have done. It's more of their process and, you know, how we can supplement, you know, taking in the true need of housing, the supply and demand that's out there now as far as unoccupied houses, you know, stuff that, you know, hasn't been able to sell, and the market conditions that exist. Obviously, the market conditions weren't like they are now back when the original one was done, and they probably won't be like they are now in 2021. Which is kind of my next point. It seems like a long time, you know, an 8-year plan. I mean, and I know that's what they required of you guys.
Well, the 8 years actually is an advantage to us because it allows us to project a little further out to help show how we would accommodate those units. But there's nothing saying that if, you know, things change radically 4 years from now, that we can't make a revision to our housing element. We would just have to go back to HCD and have that be approved. So the 8 years is the planning period, and I think it's some advantage to us.
I don't know how much leeway you guys have if you have some negotiating ability with them, but it would almost be better if their guidelines were more variable. So so you could write a more variable policy that wasn't, you know, 8 years out into the future where we don't have any idea what's going to happen, that sort of thing. That's really my only comments. But thank you.
Commissioner Leavig?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. David, I have one question regarding the actual ordinance and the how it pulls in the applicability of the general plan element. So essentially we have an ordinance and it does reference the housing element, but I can't find a spot other than the introduction that says we're implementing the housing element. Can you describe how the city will be using the document, or if the ordinance is the meat of what we follow?
Well, the housing element establishes our goals and policies on a fairly broad level, just like the general plan as a whole does. And then the ordinance is how those goals and policies are implemented in the day-to-day world. Just like the zoning ordinance, in light of like our last item, the general plan talks about providing adequate parking, and then the zoning ordinance gets to the specifics of how that would be accomplished, in the real world. So the municipal code section 15, 10, and 40 are how, in the day-to-day basis, what we use to implement the housing element on a day-to-day basis. Because what we want to be able to do is keep the ordinance, keep the housing element, detailed enough to satisfy housing element law, but to also give us some maneuvering room in the real world of how those things are implemented. Particularly because the ordinance is something we can amend on our own through the city council. It doesn't necessarily need HCD's approval, as long as whatever changes are proposed remain consistent with our housing element. So this is a kind of the yin and the yang, if you will, of how we have our Uber policy goals, and then how those goals are actually implemented, every day.
Okay. Actually, you answered my question. Thank you.
The only comment I have is I'd like to thank staff for preparing the document. It was a thorough read. My question would be, how do I end this? How do I close this?
This is just a workshop, correct?
Yeah, it's just a workshop.
There's no actionable item.
Well, actually, just for good measure, I know there's no one here, but we should probably open and close the public comment
I will open and close the public comment.
That's always awkward when there's no one.
It is, but we still have to comply with the
for,
Burn Act.
for anyone who may be watching this at home and couldn't make it tonight, we will be going back to the HAC next month and to council in June. So we encourage as much public input on this is important. This is only comes around every so many years, and it's a very important policy objective for the city.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other informal discussions? Anybody?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. I'll